Think back to when you first saw Beetlejuice. What did you make of him? He's clownish, but he's no Pennywise or Joker. He's a ghost, but he's also just sort of a fast-talking scammer. Or is he a corpse? It's not totally clear, but the thing is, he's memorable as hell. Fun fact, Beetlejuice is only present on screen for 17 minutes of the movie Beetlejuice, which is pretty short considering the name. I won't be tricked into saying it 3 times in a row though, so don't worry. But how did a seemingly random scary guy who's barely on screen at all become a pop culture phenomenon long and steady enough to make a 36 years later sequel viable? With a combo of clever filmmaking, a very accessible gateway to ghouls, and a dash of real-world folklore, with all the charm of your favorite childhood ghost summoning games, Beetlejuice turned just 17 minutes of screen time into a rent-free place to live in our heads decades later. It's just the way the character and the world is built, and here's why he's going to stick around for even longer. It's showtime! Forever!
Hello? Where are you?
Dead. Dead ski.
Of course they're dead, they're ghosts.
Hear me out. Lydia is the player character who helps nascent horror viewers get into the world and horror in general, and maybe become baby goths who wear Nightmare Before Christmas merch from Hot Topic. That's not a bad thing, by the way. But think about it, you know who it is, if this isn't you.
You can relax in a haunted house, but I can't.
Since Beetlejuice is barely even on screen, the protagonists are probably Lydia or the Maitlands, but let's just say Lydia and the Maitlands because they're basically on the same team and want the same thing. We learn about Beetlejuice and the rules of being recently deceased through their eyes, and this little group is more a cohesive family than the Dietzes, if we're being honest.
Open this door, you dead people, or we'll bust it down and we'll drag you out by the ropes you hanged yourself with.
Lydia can see Adam and Barbara because...
I myself am strange and unusual.
Yeah, that's it. Lydia is not psychic or supernatural in any way. Her only qualification is that she's an outcast who doesn't feel happy with her world as is, and she's open to things. This grants her otherworldly sight, fun, and bizarre experiences, friends who really get her, and one of the most memorable dance scenes ever.
Shake, shake, shake,
Nothing that bad happens to her except an almost wedding, and she overall has a pretty fun time and seems much happier with her life by the end. She does have suicidal ideation at one point midway through the film, which many 80s movies, particularly one starring Winona Ryder, were really flippant about. This would be a big deal in a modern lens, but for the sake of context, we'll treat it with the same gravity the movie does, even though that's not reflective of how we actually feel. The stakes for Lydia are never really all that high, except when the Maitlands are put in danger. I mean, Beetlejuice threatens to leave the netherworld and exist on Earth, but he never says anything like, I will kill everyone, or I'll make Earth awful. And they avert the crisis fairly easily. Really, the way the movie concludes is with the Dietzes and the Maitlands coexisting and co-parenting in a pretty unusual but ultimately sweet and contented way. One of the takeaways here is that Beetlejuice is pretty malevolent and unpredictable. He'll do anything it takes to get his ends, but he's ultimately a dog on a leash since he can be easily banished by the protagonists. He rides the line between being intriguingly dangerous and ultimately not a world-ender threat. But as the chapter title says, is Beetlejuice the gateway for young people into horror?
I hope not. I mean, some of it, I think, geez, you know, it's too much for certain ages, I think. But don't go by me, because some little kids see it at 5, 6, and they love it, you know, just love it, roll with it, no big deal. I'm always shocked at that.
The other takeaway I pulled is that yes, Beetlejuice is a good intermediary to get kids from normal kid content into horror content. Beetlejuice is funny, spooky, but ultimately controllable. Michael Keaton may not agree, but...
Kids will love it though. It'll make
Yeah,
them
no,
feel,
they will.
They'll feel, you know, mature.
It's dark, but like, you know, both movies have these dark moments, but then you're laughing right after, which happens in a lot of horror movies, but this is consistently like this throughout.
The whole concept is death. Like the original one.
And what's wrong with that?
The lead characters they die within the first 5 minutes.
And we are all going to.
Yeah,
God bless us.
Very true.
Death doesn't have to be a depressing thing per se, but the idea that it is certainly isn't held everywhere around the world. In some cultures, death is viewed merely as a part of life, something that doesn't necessarily need to be awful and somber, and that's something many people grow up thinking about, starting in childhood and adolescence. And if you still don't believe me on the kids' gateway idea, may I remind you, there was a wacky 90s Beetlejuice kids show in which Beetlejuice and Lydia were best friends, and he would do all kinds of bizarre, spooky, and gross things, but would never hurt his bestie Lydia. Yeah, I don't get it either, but defanging the character did work incredibly well, specifically for kids, so if that doesn't prove my point alone, it at least makes another sub-step in the path from normal kids content to Beetlejuice cartoon to Beetlejuice movie to other horror movies. Watching any form of Beetlejuice at a young age strengthens the character in that he becomes extremely relevant to an entire generation, perhaps 2 or 3 generations at this point, for a long time. And of course, that relevance means he can grow beyond being for kids and become cemented in the horror genre as genuinely scary. Yeah, Beetlejuice is scary.
Go ahead. Make my millennium.
I was struck by something Beetlejuice Beetlejuice star Jenna Ortega said in the movie's press tour, that she was scared of the titular character when she was a kid. I was also scared of Beetlejuice as a kid, and I would have nightmares about Beetlejuice the character specifically, and I would scare myself by saying his name once, twice, and twice and a half. I'd always thought I was alone in this, and it was an irrational fear, like how some kids could be scared of cats or mail carriers or something. Hearing the star of the new movie's take made me feel half justified of being scared of Beetlejuice, but you know what makes me feel fully justified? Looking at him. You tell me that concept art isn't grotesque and scary. Furthermore, let's go back to Jenna Ortega. She told the Today Show, quote, "I was scared of Beetlejuice. I loved the Gremlins, but I hated them at the same time, so I was always very confused. But I think I got older and I realized that excitement is the same as fear, so it's like when I'm scared, I can just tell myself I'm excited." That reminded me, I didn't get the humor as a little kid, so I didn't even know it was a comedy. If you take out the comedy element, a gross, rotting corpse man / unscrupulous scam artist / malevolent spirit trying to ruin things for a nice couple and marry an unwilling kid is pretty damn scary. I think there is real potential here, actually, for a legitimate straight horror movie if they wanted to go in that direction one day. What other 80s horror villains were shape-shifting idiot jerks who were actually very powerful, unpredictable, malevolent ghost spirits, but also horny on main?
You leave her alone, you...
None! He's gross and an unpredictable chaos stream.
Come to think of it, I don't have any rules.
Looking at him, there is clearly something wrong with this being, and him being a little nondescript makes it more mysterious and therefore a little more threatening just by nature. I mean, think about it. We understand the parameters for what vampires, werewolves, Frankenstein, and all the other universal classic monsters can do, really, and what they want. But Beetlejuice? There are almost no rules, except for the 3-time name-chanting summoning. You'd really have to keep your eye on him because he could do anything, for any reason, at any time, and he probably stinks. But really, a big part of what makes Beetlejuice scary is the hype up. He's almost like the shark in Jaws in that he's rarely seen but talked about constantly by the other characters in a foreboding way. And while Beetlejuice isn't based on any kind of monster storied outside of cinema, like let's say Dracula or La Llorona, he does have folklore built into his existence, which is pretty brilliant for mood building. Much like the Bloody Mary ritual kids do to scare themselves by chanting her name 3 times into a mirror to force her to appear and maybe or maybe not kill you. The rules vary based on who's telling them. No matter the exact incantation, this is a pretty fun way for bored kids to scare themselves with the Troxler effect, an optical illusion that comes from staring at a fixed point for a long time, or some form of self-hypnosis, or the very human desire to make meaningful connections between unrelated things. The benefit of the usage of this in Beetlejuice is they don't have to rely on all the spooky thrill of it all, but to just evoke it and get the same legendary spooky value. And then, yeah, they added some spooky thrills in too. This is a visual medium.
Beetlejuice! Oh, no!
Beetlejuice built his own legend by using pretty much the same techniques organic campfire ghost stories employ. Hype up from tertiary sources like, oh, have you heard? You don't want to run into that guy. Whatever you do, keep him away. And urban legend ritualization. These hallmarks trick people into thinking this character is an established legend, like the Sentry in Marvel Comics, even though he was created by writers fairly recently. He was creepypasta before creepypasta. Slender Man idolizes Beetlejuice, just trust me.
Script for Beetlejuice, it was amazing because it was the exact opposite of everything else I'd gotten. You know, most of these scripts were like, you know, A to B to C, all tied up in a neat little packet. Then I get this script that makes no sense, it has no real story. I worked with a lot of great actors that were very good at improv. You're on the set and get into a character and become it. Boy, there's amazing energy to that.
We like to make jokes about Tim Burton's extremely recognizable shtick now, like Tim Burton's Johnny Depp the movie, starring Helena Bonham Carter as Johnny Depp, and Johnny Depp as Helena Bonham Carter. And all Tim Burton, Danny Elfman soundtracks sound like this. Bum, 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 la, 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 bum, bum, etc. But here's the thing. Beetlejuice was the first Tim Burton-esque Tim Burton movie. The first major film he directed was Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and Pee-wee already had a very specific vibe that Burton's sensibilities could contribute to, of course, but was largely Paul Reubens' established vision. Pee-wee was a big success that turned the then unknown Burton into a bankable and desirable director to the point that he had earned his blank check of sorts, aka enough clout that he could make a major movie with his own vision and get it funded. The blank check film is clearly Beetlejuice. The swirly, stripy designs, the contrast between gothic overtones and 1960s era Americana, the focus on a lone, pale, gangly weirdo with scraggly hair bouncing between light and dark, the Danny Elfman sound, it's all there. And this was the first time general audiences would ever see it, so it was revelatory.
We just have to pray the other closets are bigger than this one.
There's a reason why Burton's style is so prevalent now, even sometimes in both Disney and Universal theme parks. It's very singular. Do you know how long Beetlejuice's Graveyard Review ran at Universal Studios? 24 years. And beyond that, Beetlejuice was and is very much a walk-around character in the parks. There are and have been various Beetlejuice pop-ups, and of course there's a Broadway musical. There is vested commercial interest in keeping the character somewhere in the zeitgeist. I mean geist. Or do I? But separate from the Beetlejuice franchise itself, it's largely tied aesthetically to all of Tim Burton's properties by aesthetic sensibility alone. A Tim Burton aesthetic immediately communicates a certain vibe, a certain sensibility, and it's pretty desirable, especially to younger people who feel like outcasts, which, face it, is many younger people. Not to be cynical, but yeah, it's very profitable and perhaps hand in hand gives its properties a staying power. So even if Beetlejuice is not top of mind to you in, say, the 2000s, The Nightmare Before Christmas is, or Corpse Bride is, or that one version of Alice in Wonderland and the Mad Hatter that I hate is. This is another way Beetlejuice, despite being the first Tim Burton-ass Tim Burton movie, can remain relevant even when it's not directly around.
Well, you know, hey, you probably got your reasons, but the thing is, I can't do anything from over here. If you could get me out over there, then maybe we could talk or something. But, you know, in order to do that, you gotta say my name 3 times.
What's your name?
So, in one way, yeah, Beetlejuice is forever because he's intended to be forever through the ghostly power of capitalism. But in a less gross way, Beetlejuice is still going all these years later because the character is written to fit into his own niche in our mental gallery of horror villains. He has a look and skill set unlike any other character, which is unpredictable, very much like he is. He makes sense in an urban legend context, but also in a real-world context. We've all seen an obviously shifty, self-interested person we look out for, right? Like a gross Green Lantern, he can do nearly anything imaginable, which is fun, but he can be banished, which is safe. He can work for kids and adults alike, which makes him a lasting IP, and the movie around him is built to be striking, evocative, and a distinct world of its own. Beetlejuice is built to last for all these reasons, and another crucial point in Beetlejuice history is coming up: the sequel. Viewership estimates are tracking very high, but whether or not it meets or fails expectations, there's still a lot to suggest that Beetlejuice hasn't been banished for good.
Beetlejuice.
Thanks for watching. I'm Kim Horcher, and I wrote this video feature. Remember to like and subscribe to IGN on whatever platform you're watching me on right now if you haven't already. And for more on the ghost with the most, check out our interview with the cast of Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is... Oh, he's here. Gotta go. Bye.
It's showtime.